In this interview, we talked to Anthony. He is a recent success story. He has built a couple of niche sites. He's sold one as well. And right now he's making, I think it's around $700 a month or so. So we talk about some of the details with niche selection, keyword research, content, link building. And then we go deep into link building and we talk about HARO, which is help a reporter out. He's developed a bit of a process and he's outsourcing this in a really, really effective way. It's pretty amazing, and this is where we spend most of the time. If you're brand new to the channel, my name's Doug. We talk a lot about affiliate marketing and side hustles, making money online. So if you're interested, check out some other videos. Please subscribe. Actually, go ahead and hit the subscribe button now. And by the way, if you're interested in learning more and even going deeper into HARO and what Anthony's doing, please leave a comment on this video. Ask specific questions. Anthony and I talked after I recorded this, and I was like, hey man, do you want to go deeper on this sometime? I know people are going to want to hear more. So if you want to hear more, leave a comment and let us know. And without further ado, let's talk to Anthony. How's it going today?
Yeah, good, Doug. Good. How about yourself?
Doing pretty good. It's been it's warm here. It's later in the afternoon. We're talking across the ocean here. Where are you located, Anthony?
So I'm in Australia, but specifically Geelong, which is about an hour outside of Melbourne, which is probably the biggest city around here that most people would have heard of. So yeah, it's a nice little coastal city.
Awesome. And just so we can get to like some of the meat right away, can you let us know about some of your earnings and traffic and a little bit about the success that you've seen so far?
Yeah, of course. So I've been doing some form of online business for going on 2.5, 3 years at the moment, and sort of like everybody, you sort of flip around and you start one thing and you do it for a little bit and you're like, oh, this is a little bit shit, and then you go to something else and then you're like, oh, this is also a little bit I'm not really getting this, and you sort of like keep going aside. And I kept going back to this affiliate website stuff, and I would read it and I'd be like, this sounds really doable. One of the first businesses I had was completely outside of the affiliate space and everything, but it was kind of in the e-com space, and I had no idea what I was doing. And I did the writing for it. I'm an English teacher by trade. I enjoy writing, and I really enjoyed the content side of it. So I was like, oh, maybe if I can do something like this. I always kept looking at it. So yeah, since then I've started my first affiliate site at the start of 2019. It's now sort of halfway through 2020. About a year and a half. I worked on my first site for about a year. Sold it in I think it was December. Started a new one. The site that I started just 6 months ago or 7 months ago is now earning about $600 a month. On track for a little bit more. On track for about 800 this month. But I've had a couple of uncharacteristically sort of high days in there, so it's a bit hard to judge that. So getting that 600 to 800 a month mark now pretty consistently for the last 3 or 4 months.
Cool. And the site's only about 6 months, 7 months old?
Yeah, I bought it from Human Proof Design actually, so it could be a little bit older than that originally, but it was one of their fresh sites. It wasn't like an aged money-making site or anything like that. It was one of their cheaper done-for-you sites.
Okay, cool. And how much content was on there, if you happen to recall the initial
I
set?
think I think it was their minimum, so it was about 10,000 words. I think they usually have for their minimum, so it was one of those. Just yeah, 10,000 words, pretty basic content, like decent but pretty basic, and yeah, took it from there and went with it.
Awesome. And was it a niche that you were like interested in? Did you care much about the products or?
Somewhat, it was a sub niche. So what Human Proof do really really well, I think, is they'll pick a sub niche and then the domain will be like much broader. So the little sub niche, I didn't really. I understood it, I liked it, but the broad niche in general is what I liked. So I think I basically, as soon as I bought it, I padded out that first niche a little bit and then just sort of left that there and moved on to the other niches as well.
Okay, cool. And I think, they adapted that adapted to that over time, because initially I think they were very narrowly focused, and then they started building sites that would allow you to grow and expand. So that's cool that you were able to, get one of those and get traction quickly. And I know probably some people are thinking, man, that's crazy, because kind of the benchmark in general is about $100 per month after about 6 months, and here you've hit 6-7 times that. So do you have any secrets on do you think there's any specific thing that you did that helped you get traction so quick on this site?
It wasn't my first site, which is one thing. Like, a lot of people will be thinking that when it's their first site. So I'd already had that first site, which I built to around about $1,000 a month before I sold it. So I knew it was coming. I kind of knew what I was doing. Also, because I had 2 or 3 years content writing experience, I was also writing freelance work as well. My rate as a freelancer is significantly more than I'm willing to pay someone else to write, I guess would be a way to say that. So I could write 1,000 words for somebody else and reinvest it into 2,000 words on my own site, if that makes sense. So that wasn't a major factor, but it definitely let me grow quicker, grow content quicker. And again, for ways to grow, just low competition, thinking outside the box a little bit. My site's at that stage where it's earning good money, but it's definitely earning off 2 fewer pages for my liking. There's one page that kind of fits in to the niche. So using your ballpoint pen example that you use on this podcast and YouTube a bit, it would be like saying the best writing pad if you have a ballpoint pen, which is kind of not in the pen niche, but it's kind of comes in on the side. And that's the one that's earning all the money so far. So I'm like, that's cool. So I'm frantically trying to do that, and frantically trying to build the rest up and get that variety in earning as well.
Cool. And how much content is on the site now?
About 120 posts, I would say. A couple of posts that would be in the 2,000 plus mark. Usually they're about 1,000. Yeah.
Okay. About 1,000 words. So between
1,000 and about 2,000. That. Because there's such a low competition, I usually stick to lower word counts, and yeah.
Okay. And what's the breakdown from informational and product reviews? A
lot of product reviews. My sort of theory when I come to writing reviews is I'll target some really heavy competition keywords at the start as well. Like, I know I said before, low competition is how I get the traffic, but the way I kind of see it is those high competition keywords will take kind of 6 months to start doing anything anyway. So I may as well start that 6 months as early as possible, put the line in, and then I use PageOptimizer Pro and little things like that, and I can just keep updating those as well. So because of that, I would say it's probably 80 to 90% would be money posts at the moment. So not really and that's something as I'm doing now. I'm sort of more investing into the information side of the posts as well. Yeah.
Okay. Gotcha. And for people that don't know, PageOptimizer Pro or POP, can you tell them about it?
Yeah, cool. So I actually got the idea from when Kyle Roof, who I think is the creator potentially, was on this show. And it's basically a way that you can scrape the data from the top ranking pages for a particular keyword. Google is doing this sort of thing at the moment where if you type something in, all of the pages will kind of be the same thing. So if it's a list post, all of the top searches will be list posts. If it's an affiliate post, it's just showing the same thing all the time, which, personally I don't really like, but as a user of the internet, but it is what it is. Use what it's doing and use it to our advantage. So it kind of gives you the average. So it might say, it'll give you a bunch of goals that you should be aiming for your page. So it might be, you should be aiming for 1,600 words, try and use the keyword 8 times, once in a subheading, and just little things like that you can do to optimize your page.
And it's a great tool. It takes a second to sort of figure out how to use it. Did you find there was a little bit of a learning curve?
Oh yeah, definitely. I think I bought it at the start. It was one of those things where I had 15 minutes spare, and I was like, well, I'll just buy that sort of thing now, and then I'll think about it later. So I logged in at the first time, and I was like, oh my Lord. They've actually introduced in the last month or so, an express version of it. So now you get an option to do like traditional or an express, and the express one makes it a little bit easier for you. It's not as in depth, but I wasn't using all of the bells and whistles anyway because I didn't understand most of them. So it just gives you the basic stuff that sort of anyone can use, which this is what I'm using at the moment.
Yeah, I agree 100% because I got it like right when it came out because, Kyle's a friend and he was like, check out the tool and blah, blah, blah. And yeah, it was a little confusing at first, but they actually have a lot of videos and tutorials, and they just put out a Chrome extension. So that really makes it a lot easier to work with. So I'll put a link out there for people to check out Pop. But I mean, I think it's a great way to, especially if it's not your first site. If it's your first site, Pop could be a little confusing at first, but your second site and so on, I mean, it's great. So
yeah, if you were to think about it like, I don't know, if you were trying to lose weight, Pop is like that apple cider vinegar that gets you like that extra little couple of percent. But if you're trying to start for the first time, it's just like, we'll just start with cutting your calories and we'll go from there. Like, it's the extra little thing that if you know what you're doing, it works, but it would definitely be too much for someone who doesn't really, who's new to it.
And I think like sort of the perfect person is like you have a site that you've published content, you're getting traction, things are going okay, and you're not sure how to improve content specifically. So it gives you sort of a blueprint and framework to follow along in a prioritized way, and it makes it very clear once you get it set up. So anyway.
It's a nice little addition to the way I would usually update content, which I would usually sort of, do the old find what the page is searching for in Google Console, and if it's ranking for a keyword that I'm not really targeting yet, I'll add another little subheading in with that keyword and write about that. And so it's a nice little, that's kind of just working it out on my own. So it's nice to have something that's a bit more concrete in there as well.
Exactly. So with the keyword research, just curious, do you have any sort of approach, or are you? Okay, let's hear about it.
So I am the biggest tight ass when it comes to keyword research. I use either keyword sheeter or keyword shitter, depends what they're using it like. I don't know if it's the same people that run both. I have no idea, but I kind of find one works and one doesn't, and then it'll swap and the other one will work and the other one won't. So I don't know if it's the same people that run it, but you basically put a bunch of STEM keywords in. So it might be best ballpoint pen for, and then I just leave it and it'll give the rest. If you leave it for a while, it'll give you, depending on how many seed keywords you give it, it could be like a couple of thousand keywords. If you leave it for too long, it just scrapes like the entire internet. I think I left it for and had a shower one day and came back and it was like, the suggestions were like Facebook, Google, YouTube, Walmart. And I was like, oh God. So you do all that. I bulk copy it and then I use the keywords everywhere. Chrome extension, I pay for that because that's super cost effective. You can bulk import. So I just copy the whole thing, bulk import and get all the data from that. And then I'll do some research into what's KGR and what's got a good what keyword I think I like. And the more you do it, you kind of you can just do it from the keywords everywhere research as well. Once you've done a few articles and you get some success, you kind of know what works and what doesn't. And then I'll also just write some articles that I think belong on the site as well. Okay. Without really research.
Okay. Yep. And I think that's pretty common. I'm starting a new site now, and kind of all the stuff that you mentioned where, some low competition stuff is the bulk. There's some that just need to be there. It's a good topic, even though it'll never rank for anything. And then there's some other topics where, maybe in 6 months for a brand new site, or a year, or 18 months, that it's going to take a long time to rank. But, you may as well have it, go ahead and get it out there. But that's just a small portion.
Yeah, and that's also for the people that are already on the site as well. Like, if you've got one of those, like a big software review or something like that you don't expect to rank for because it's hyper competitive, but that's something you can divert some traffic towards on your own site once they're already in there. I think there's benefit in that as well. Yeah.
Cool. For content tips, because you are, a writer and you you do it as a side hustle, as part of your profession. Do you have any like specific content tips for folks that are maybe struggling with it a little bit?
Yeah. So I keep the intro as short as possible. I'll use the keyword in the intro once, usually, use it in a subheading as well. Just have it to be as conversational as possible. I want to give some personality to it. I think if you do that, especially in the intro, the personality needs to be, especially at the start, towards the end. I find if you can throw like a funny little GIF or something in there as well, just something to sort of hook people in, talk about yourself a little bit when you can, don't do it too much, and just I like to have a reader in mind, so almost like a profile of my perfect reader for that website or that article. And I've got these little sort of reader personas and if you like buyer persona sort of things, and I'm writing to that one person, which kind of in my mind makes it a lot easier if I'm writing to someone rather than writing to you, the reader, who could be landing on this page. It's just I find that really impersonal. So if I have someone in mind, I can write to them. For me, it just becomes a lot easier to write.
Okay. And did you just like make up a person? You're like, this is probably the kind of person that would look for this keyword and be interested in the topic?
Pretty much. At the start, I just sort of took a guess. After about 6 months of owning the site, I used the Google Analytics, like user profiles, to see sort of the average range, like it's only age and things like that. But I knew, for example, that my website was gearing towards, it was like 25 to 35 year olds. So I was like, cool, I can kind of write to that audience. If that's if that's 85% of the people that are visiting my site, I can tweak my language a little bit to suit that.
Perfect. Okay. And you hire writers from somewhere. It sounds like you're doing the writing and then you're reinvesting what you're earning there to supply the writing, and you get more content. And where do you hire them? Do you have any specific techniques that you enjoy?
It's very hit and miss. There's a couple of groups that I like and some I've used before. What I did at the start, such a mistake in hindsight, but you learn from it, so it is what it is. I found someone who the content was incredibly cheap, but it was good enough, and I was like, oh man, this is brilliant. I've like threaded the needle here. So I just like pumped some money into it, invested it, and it was sort of like too much content that I could keep up with quality control. And then after like 3 or 4 months of investing some money into it and getting all these words on the site, I started like properly looking through them, and I was like, man, this is rubbish. I was like, this is terrible. So, we've got new writers now. And it was one of those things where, and at the end of the day, like it's obviously the writers didn't do the best job, but at the end of the day, the onus falls on me as the site owner, and that's my quality upkeep that I didn't do. I sort of was trying to pump too much into it too quickly, which has benefits as well in a way. So now I've got these, at least the content's on there, and if it's starting to do something, that's the next page that I'm going to update to sort of make better, I guess, because if it's ranking with what's on there now, if I make the content better, it's going to rank more. So yeah, it's a way to at least get some lines in the river and see what catches.
Perfect. Yeah, and I mean that's common too. Like once you have the ability to hire people and you're like, oh, this is great, we have all this content, and then you'll find the next weakest link. Often that's yourself or myself with trying to keep up. So let's move on to link building and specifically HARO. And shout out to Dan who sent some questions in. He was like, Anthony sounds interesting. I want to learn more. And I was like, oh, do you have any specific questions? And then he literally did my job for me. So we're gonna dive through what Dan sent over just in general. So let's start with like maybe the best link, the juiciest link that you got. You don't have to share exactly what site, but can you just like talk about the best link that you've gotten so far with this HARO approach?
Yeah. So the best link, probably by brand name, would be one that I wrote the response myself for this one, but because it's one that I think of. So I've got a couple of Business Insider links, which are pretty good. I like those, but through the outsourcing, I've got some, DA, I think some in the 50s and one in the 60s, I think. So yeah, you take that and run with it. You kind of expect anything. So as far as like name recognition though, they might mean things to some people, but for me, Business Insider was the biggest name that I looked at it and it was like, oh yeah, I've heard of them. I read that. So yeah, that would be, that's probably the biggest site that I've had so far.
Cool. Yeah, that's pretty amazing to get one of those links. I mean, that's a huge site. So as far as like the outsourcing, can you give us a little bit of a breakdown of like what's going on? And it sounds like you do some of this too. So did you start outsourcing? Did you start doing it yourself? And then,
I started doing it myself. Yes, I started doing it myself. And then HARO comes out at the most inconvenient times. If you're in Australia, it could not be less convenient. It's like, midnight, it's like 5 a.m. It's ridiculous. And you've got to get onto it so quickly because if for sometimes they're publishing it like later that day. I've had some responses where, I'll write something and then they'll respond, an hour and a half later and say, it's perfect, we'll use it. And then 2 hours after that, there's like the link to the finished article. And I was like, God damn, like that's so quick. And sometimes you get the response back like a month and a half later. So sometimes if you're too quick, if you're not quick enough, you'll miss out. So I was doing it and trying to keep on track, but they also kind of get lost in the emails a little bit. So I was like, surely I can outsource. I can find someone to do this. I'll try it out and sort of see how it goes. And I found I just did it on Upwork, just try to put out feelers out there, put a job out. Found someone who had said she's done it before for people, has experience in it, has used HARO before. So I sent her out some things and I was like, let's sort of see how it goes. We'll try a couple of days. So I made like a little throwaway Gmail account, changed the HARO subscription from my personal email to that email, gave her access to that throwaway Gmail account. So she uses that for the responses. We have a spreadsheet, which kind of goes through it. It took a little bit of time at the start. So I think there was one time, I think it was in the first week or two, and she'd responded to something around like adult toys or something like that. And like I said before, like I'm a teacher as a day job. So I'm looking at it and I saw it in the spreadsheet and I was like, surely not. I looked at the response and I was like, you've got to be kidding me. So I was like emailing her and I was like, please don't associate I have year 9 students that are going to be like Googling their teacher's name. I don't want to show up with like a photo of me next to some X-rated toy with just like a smiling photo of me next to it. So if we could like avoid that, I'd be stoked. So after we ironed out a couple of creases like that, it's been going pretty swimmingly. I think we're about 18 weeks in. It's funny that we're doing this interview now, literally probably about a day or two before you contacted me. I just sent out some feedback and we started tweaking a few little things to make it, we've done 18 weeks, we've got a bit of data now. Let's see if we tweak these little things, if it gets better or worse, and we'll keep going. Yeah, some tweaks at the start, but well worth it if you stick through it, I think.
Awesome. And can you give us an idea like how many links that you've gotten over the course, especially with it outsourced?
Yeah, so with it outsourced, I just did some numbers before. I've got, so in 18 weeks, there was 70 responses. And in those 70 responses, I think there's a minimum of 13 approved. So I think, what's that, like 1 in 5, 1 in 6, somewhere around there. So that's in 18 weeks. Yeah, so I think that's 1 in 5, 1 in 6 are getting accepted. So,
okay. And then you mentioned, you don't want to give out exact prices that she's charging. Is there any way you could quantify like how much you've paid for the 13 links?
Okay, cool. So it would be, I pay by the hour, and it would be around about, I think we're usually on the books for about an hour a day responding to quotes. And it is around that, Okay. I think per link, it would be, working it out, like $30 a link, I would say.
Awesome.
Off memory, something around that. So relatively cost effective especially considering what the HARO questions have been about in the past 3 months, it's been very sort of coronavirus and COVID heavy. So I could only imagine, and like I said as well, that's a minimum amount of approved. That's only the people that are responding and saying, yes, we'll use it, and here's the link. So it could be more than that as well.
Got it. Okay. That is exceptionally cost effective and pretty amazing. So with the person that you're outsourcing it to, do they pretend it's you, or how is it set up?
Yeah, so when you sent the question, and who was the man that sent the questions through? Sorry,
Dan.
Dan. So when Dan sent the question through, and you sent it to me, does she use your name or does she use like someone else's name? I was like, man, that's a really good idea. I wish I'd have thought of like using someone else's name. So in hindsight, if I'd have thought of that, that's what I would have done. It also would have solved the issue at the start. But so I use my own name for that. So she uses my little sign off and things like that. Yeah, so she has pretty much autonomy about what she answers to a degree. We have some little rules about what she can and can't respond to. So she said she's had some clients that are pretty happy for her to make up a story about something that's happened to get a link. I'm not really too keen on that because nothing really good can come from that. A lot of them will be research based, like one will be, I think one that got approved a couple of weeks ago was a book about, like, what's your favorite book about empowerment or something like that. So she obviously did some research for that and responded, and that got approved. So, yeah.
Okay, cool. And I think it was Kyle who actually sort of triggered all this HARO stuff in the last month when he was like, hey, Doug, like you kind of slammed HARO, but it's been working out well for me. Then within a couple of days, you let me know that it was going well for you. And I think Kyle mentioned, hopefully I'm getting his name right. I think Kyle mentioned it was so important to, strike quickly and make sure that as soon as people were, I don't know how it works on HARO exactly, once they release the people that are looking for the information from you to reply quickly. So how do you manage that with your VA?
Yeah, so she only responds to the emails. I know I was listening to that episode and he was saying that he pays for the premium feature and that gets early access, which is, I would assume that my numbers would increase if I did that. I haven't really sort of looked into it too much. I hadn't really understood, to be honest, I hadn't done too much research and understood what the difference was. But now I know that the difference is that extra little bit of time. Actually, from listening to the episode, I was like, that's probably worth trying out, actually. And that's sort of part of tweaking the process I'm doing now. Once I've got that humming as good as it can be, I'll invest that little bit more. But timing is so important, and I think that's what made it really hard from doing it from Australia. I would have to sort of respond before work at sort of 6 a.m, and there might be like, I think the first one would come through at like 9 at night or 9:30. So I'd kind of respond to 1 in the morning, 1 at night, and that would really be about it. But yeah, getting in early for that sort of stuff is important as well. There's also an Australian version of HARO, and it's called Source Bottle. I don't outsource for that because it's not as popular, but I just check it out every now and then as well. Yeah, so it's a similar type of deal.
Okay. And it sounds like your VA has some autonomy and you don't have to be involved and screen anything. So are you just outsourcing it completely and then you just see the results in a spreadsheet or something?
Yeah, pretty much. So we've got a spreadsheet that she'll add the site, the web, like what the query was, add if it's been like accepted, rejected, or submitted, and we'll go from there. Because it's a throwaway Gmail account, I can access her responses if I'm like, super desperate to go Big Brother on her. Otherwise, I give her autonomy. Obviously, the better she works at the start, the more autonomy you get in the future. If she was rubbish, I probably would be screening everything she was doing. But if you hire good people, then you can let them do what they're good at, I think. So, yeah.
Okay. And you mentioned that she had been doing this work before and she was familiar with the process. And I know you probably haven't done this, but I mean, do you think it would be hard to just train an assistant, say like an executive assistant that you could hire who, I mean, basically you're sending emails and doing a little research. So do you envision this as like a pretty straightforward process to train a VA?
That was kind of what I thought I was going to be doing. I think I wrote in the job posting off memory. I think like halfway down was kind of like, I don't really expect anyone to have done this before, but if you have, like, let me know, because that's a good thing. And she was the only person who'd said that she'd actually done it before, and she'd had done it for others, but I was definitely expecting to have to train someone to do it, because it is, at the end of the day, it's not rocket science. It's just finding some research, responding to some emails. And if there's at the start, if there was anything SEO related, that I would get her to forward that to me and I would respond to it. That wasn't exactly time efficient. So instead, I've just given her a list of like SEO tips and, things, answers to potential questions. That's only been in the last couple of weeks, actually. So we'll see how that goes. But otherwise, she's just been doing some research heavy stuff. So yeah, I would say it wouldn't take that long to train. Even a writer could do it. Like if you had a writer on your books as well, like that could easily be something you get them to do as well.
Yeah, that makes sense. I've found writers, obviously, they're writing for you, so they can communicate pretty well, hopefully. And it's really just sending a couple emails and filling out a spreadsheet. So, cool.
Yeah, exactly. So if you can do that, and even you can give them an extra, if it's a writer, you could even have them, as with the writing you're doing, if you respond to my HARO queries, every published one you get, I'll give you a $50 bonus, for example. I don't know. And that's $50 a link. It's pretty cheap compared to what you can pay. You're keeping your writers happy. You're, giving them extra money for just responding to a few emails. You don't have to do it. Yeah, win-win.
Very good. Yeah, and you read my mind. I was going to go there at some point. But yeah, like, do you pay your assistant any extra for actually landing a link, or is it just straight up hourly?
I've started doing it with a bonus at the end of the month for every published one. And yeah, that's not something that I have to do. It's more something that I want to do. Like, I don't think that would be a deal breaker for anybody, but I would prefer to do that. So
yeah, and it makes sense. I mean, it's definitely an easily detectable, results driven piece of work. So it's like you get the link, you know, they're doing a good job.
And even if it's that incentive to send a follow-up email as well, sort of, because I'll only give the bonus for a published link. Like if once we know it's published, more so than once it's accepted. So it's a way to follow up with that email and say, hey, you said that this response was going to be published. Just wondering how the article's going. And that extra email can be what makes or breaks that bonus for that website, for that article. Because sometimes the journalists won't send out the finished link. Funnily enough, that Business Insider backlink wasn't like, I didn't know that it was published or even accepted. I was sort of doing some backlink research on my own site, and I was like, Business Insider, that's weird. And then I clicked through, and it was like one of my HARO responses, and I was like, oh man, okay, that's would have been nice to know. So yeah, you don't know actually, like the ones that have responded, and that's really about it. So yeah.
Do you have specific criteria for the requests that come in? So how do you manage that? How do you make sure you're replying to the ones that are the most likely to land, and you're not wasting your time on the ones that won't?
Yeah, so I basically just limit it to something that kind of touches on my niche. If you have a site about, I don't know, if you have a site about cars and automobiles, and you have an auto niche site, and you're responding to like a health and fitness query, the fact that you're, Doug Cunnington from, I don't know, bigfastcars.com doesn't really help. So I try and limit it to something that's kind of related to my niche, and also things that are easily researched. Some things that won't respond with, tell us a personal story about XYZ. So I kind of don't do those. You can't really tell usually. What I've found with HARO is a lot of the times the bigger websites won't mention their website name, because if you're Forbes or if you're Business Insider or if you're CNN or some huge website and you put your CNN or some huge website on there, you're going to get every single response. So you have a way more to sort through. So I found the bigger ones don't really mention who they are, because that way they just get the best responses that fit, more so than like every response. Yeah.
Okay.
So more just limit it to the niche more so than everything else.
Okay. And is there any like specific technique to, I guess, save time? I imagine there could be so many responses. So do you just set up a specific filter on HARO to get what you're looking for there?
Yeah, so you can access the particular the categories. So what categories you want to receive. We just stick to the main ones that would suit our brand, and we go from there. We've got a pretty much a template for responses. Template's a strong word, but basically have the response so it's well written enough that the journalist could copy and paste it straight from the email and insert it into there. So yeah, have it its own little paragraph so it's easy enough. You'd be like, hey, my name's Anthony from blah, blah, blah. Here's my response to the query. Insert the query. Have it its own paragraph. Have it full sentences. Have it well written enough that the person could just, yep, okay, I'll use that, copy paste. Make it as easy for the journalist as possible. Yeah.
Perfect. And I know the VA has autonomy to do research, write the response back. Do you have any like stock answers for common things that may come through, specific source material, or do you just let your VA do her thing?
Yeah, we've just started recently with that. I was doing some more autonomy because it was the first time I've done it. I wasn't really sure what would work and what wouldn't. So I was kind of learning myself. We've just started recently with a series of answers. So I've got a Google sheet that we share now, like a Google Doc, and I'll add responses. And the plan is with this, if there is a particular, like a theme that's coming up in responses or in queries, I should say, I can add, a story that would help with that. And that's something that she could use for her research more so than doing some Google work. So yeah, if I was to do it again, it would definitely be something that I would look into doing from the start, is having a list of either set responses or maybe dot pointed out. So it's not just complete cookie cutter and it can be tweaked. But yeah, having something there to go off. We are trying it at the moment, but at the start it was just complete autonomy and see how it goes.
For, I guess, scaling this up, do you envision like it could be scaled up? Like sometimes if you add more people or throw more money at something, you can do even more of it. In this case, it seems like, you have to filter based on what queries are coming in, what the reporters actually need. So, I mean, is this something that you could scale up?
I wouldn't have thought it could be something that you could scale up in the way of, potentially if you couldn't scale up in regards to, it wouldn't be a clear sum of, if I've got 3 people outreaching for guest posts, if I get 6 people outreaching, I should have twice the success. I don't think it would work like that. It would be more, because there is only a limited amount of queries that come out every day. So there is a list that you have to go with. The only thing, gearing it out loud and thinking out loud, would be you could potentially get someone who's more of an expert in a category. So if I know there's a health and fitness category on HARO. If you had someone who's, well-versed in that, their answers would be better, I would assume, than a generalist, which would mean there's a higher chance of those answers getting published. So you could potentially have more of an expert, and you would be getting writers for this, I would assume. You could have someone who's more well-versed in each category, and they would just be in control of responses for that category. But I don't like, that might be scaling up because the answers would be better, but there is only a limited amount of queries that come out every day. So you're kind of capped at that stage. And also if you've got 3 responders responding to everything with the same website link, like they're not going to use the same quote from the same bloke like 3 times. So
Yeah. And that's actually one question that I forgot earlier that is an important one. Where do the links go?
just homepage.
Okay.
Yeah, just the homepage. If there's something that I've given her, my VA, like a list of like money pages as well, like that could be related and things that I'd want to build links to. If by luck a question around that particular post comes up that could be related, use that post. Otherwise, just homepage, which is just the more natural way of link building, I think, for that sort of stuff. So it's pretty unlikely that when I was doing it myself, because I knew all the articles on my website, or even if I didn't know it exactly, I'd be like, I'm pretty sure I've got an article about that and I could use that. But yeah, makes it a little bit harder to go to a page. So I just go homepage.
That seems, like you said, more natural. And, if you look at big sites, a lot of times, 40, 60% of the links are going to the homepage with like some kind of branded anchor text or something more general. So that totally makes sense.
And you can even see, like, depending on the experience of the writer of a blog post, you could easily have, Doug Cunnington from Niche Site Project has said, and then a quote from you, but the anchor is actually just Niche Site Project going to your homepage. If you're not a well-versed link builder or article writer, you don't know what that link does to anyone. You're probably just thinking it helps for your, you're not stealing any ideas. So yeah, it's just a way more natural way of doing it.
Very good. Is there anything else you could think of with the process in general, or tips for people that are thinking, hey, I want to try out HARO, this sounds awesome?
I would definitely say respond to your own for a little bit, figure out what works, what doesn't. That's the same as anything, though, with this sort of stuff. But definitely be doing it yourself for a little while. Figure out what works, figure out how to respond properly, because if you just go straight out and try to get a freelancer to do it and you don't know the instructions to give them, and you give them, like, if someone follows shitty instructions, that's your fault. It's not their fault. So do it yourself at the start. Try and get that process as good as possible. And once it becomes too hard to keep up with, then get someone else. Definitely stick with them at the start. Get some responses from them. Obviously, I would be getting the responses after they've already submitted it, rather than, because it is so quick, what we're talking about before. If I need to be next to my phone, so my VA can be, hey, I'm going to use this response. What do you think? I'll read that, go, okay, that's cool, use that. I may as well just do it myself. So maybe like a weekly checkup, because if the response is shit, they just won't use it on their website and you don't get a link. So like nothing lost, really. Yeah, that'd be about it.
Awesome. Very good. Well, thanks a lot, Anthony. Appreciate your insights on this, and it makes me want to get out there and try it and see how it'll work for my site. And, it sounds like it's sort of universal. I mean, there's so much content being published out there every day, all the time, and these reporters need something to cite.
Yeah, exactly. And I would definitely be looking at sort of keeping up with trends at the moment. So because there's obviously been a lot of coronavirus things at the moment, a lot of the queries are about, how do you deal with this and what do you know about this? And like, I know what I read, and that's really, I don't consider myself an expert. So I've just basically said, don't respond to anything like that, because I don't want some reader to read something I've said and assume that I know what I'm talking about. So don't do that, but also keep up with, around the holidays. So Christmas, Valentine's Day, Father's Day, Mother's Day, there's always usually gift guide queries as well. So maybe have some, now I'm actually thinking about it, it's probably what I'm going to do straight after this, is add that Google Doc and be like, at Christmas time, this is my favorite gift for dads, this is my favorite gift for mums, this is my favorite gift for teenagers, and just things that they can use like straight away. So yeah.
Very good. That's awesome. Well, thanks a lot, Anthony. Are you off the grid? Can people follow you anywhere? Feel free to mention it if so, or we can put links to it. And if not, I respect it if you're off the grid.
Yeah, I'm usually in the groups, in the Facebook groups and stuff somewhere, but being a teacher, I don't really stick out there too much because the first thing a kid does when they get their new teacher at the start of the year is Google who they are. So yeah, off the grid somewhat. But if you see me in the groups, feel free to reach out and have a chat, and we'll go from there.
Right on. Well, thanks a lot for joining us. Really appreciate it.
Awesome, thanks, man.
All right, don't forget, if you want to hear more from Anthony, if you want to go a little deeper, ask any questions that you may have about the process and HARO in general. We'll see you on the next video.